So we're really lucky to have these two guests today who are not just Leica users or Leica photographers, but who come from very different avenues and backgrounds of creativity and human accomplishment. One is Young Guru, who's an incredibly renowned Grammy Award-winning audio engineer, having worked with Jay-Z, Beyonce, Drake, and many more. He was once named the most famous and successful engineer in the history of hip hop in a profile done on him by the Wall Street Journal. Now, our second guest is Romeo Okwara, whose day job is actually playing defensive end for the Detroit Lions in the National Football League. But while competing against other pro athletes during the season, so by competing against other pro athletes at the highest level puts him on TV every week throughout the season, he developed a passion for photography so strong that he created a personal body of work documenting a New York City firehouse over the course of 2 years. So on the one end, we have creativity in the music space, right? That mix of potential energy and the audible attack that music brings us, motivating our potential creativity into action. And on the other end, we have the very definition of the kinetic energy, right? That peak performance, athleticism that the human condition can showcase. So what unifies these avenues for creativity and performance, and the reason we are here today, is photography. Right? Photography can be the great unifier for so many of us. So I want to welcome Young Guru and Romeo Okwara. Please go ahead and turn on your cameras and come off mute.
How you doing?
Hello. Welcome, guys. I'm so happy for you guys to be here with us. Everyone sound off in the chat, say hi. So this is really cool. We've got a nice topic today to talk about and some great photos to share. And I think it's gonna be just a kind of a fun conversation between the three of us and a lot of cool ideas and concepts to share. So if you don't mind, guys, we can jump right into it. Our theme overall is focusing on the essentials and a little bit, we want to touch a little bit on staying analog, using analog film photography. And let me start off with an image because, right, that speaks volumes. So both these guys were so nice to share a bunch of images that we're going to go through today, have a nice little slideshow and talk about them, kind of ask each other questions and discuss them. So Guru, you sent me this image and I said, I want to lead with this. And I said it for partially kind of a funny reason. I said, I've been on the subway so many times. I go around all the time in New York City. And I looked at this photo and I thought, it's the New York City subway. It epitomizes it in so many ways. And also, I'm not nearly as tall as Young Guru.
Yeah, I mean, this one was one that I took it for a bunch of different reasons, but it also does illustrate another concept of my height. So, I'm 6'5", and a lot of times my perspective is from that height. And you don't realize that until you actually get into photography. So one, I took this photo just because it kind of represents to me the beauty of the New York City subway. It's like that thing for me. I don't like to drive into New York as somebody who lives in New Jersey and goes into New York like on a daily basis to go work. The train is that thing that kind of wakes me up and sort of, I don't know, puts me in that spirit, especially for New York City, because New York is that beautiful town where nobody cares, and when I say nobody cares, I mean that nobody cares like, oh, this person does this person does that. At 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, people are on their way to work and they're focused on their money. So it's like everybody's focused on that pole. People are trying to like not look each other in the eye. It's crammed in there. And it's just like this photo for me represents that, but it does, lean towards the fact of this is my normal view when I get on a train because I'm sort of above everybody else just based off of pure height. But, I just love that feeling on a train. So that I wanted to take a photo that sort of captures that thing, that feeling of what New York City train like life is every day. Because to me, that's really the blood of the city. It's where I interact with like the common people, or just you get to see what things are going on every day, or right. Just for me musically, I can watch kids that are on the train and kind of hear what they're listening to. So I'm not listening to like say a chart or listening to someone's opinion. It's my ground level of figuring out like the zeitgeist of what's going on in the city.
Right, and it's a very New York moment in a lot of ways, even though it's one that happens, albeit right now, we're in different times these days, but right. It's one that normally happens every day at any given time. And now,
And
Romeo,
the weird thing for me too, I'm sorry to cut you
no,
off,
no, go ahead, go ahead.
the very weird thing for me is that my schedule is sort of reversed from everyone else in New York. So at the time when people are doing the morning rush to get into the city, I'm doing the thing to get out of the city. So I've probably worked all night in a session, you know, until like 5, 6 in the morning. And then I'm taking the train, leaving New York, going back to Jersey, and everybody's going the opposite way of me. So it's always this like really interesting thing of there's a double life in New York of people that work at night and people that work during the day. And that's why New York never stops, because there's this thing that happens in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And Romeo, you have another image for us that's also a very New York moment. You also have a very unique perspective physically as well, because you're also fairly tall. So you have to kind of work to get that lower perspective. But I love this image that you shared with us. Again, it just epitomizes New York. But go ahead, what can you tell us about this shot that you grabbed?
Yeah, on the height thing, I found myself crouching a lot of times when I'm trying to take photos. I got to work on these knees. Yeah, this moment was just, I think it was by Katz's Deli in downtown New York, which is one of my favorite restaurants. If anyone has been to take a trip. And it was just a moment where I think someone who was working at Katz's probably came outside to see his girlfriend. And it's just kind of this moment where you see the two people walking down the street kind of mindlessly, going about their business. But there's this moment going on right next to them. And that's what I kind of see about just walking around the city. It's just these individual moments going on amongst this kind of chaotic, this chaos that's going on around everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's again a very New York moment when, you know, there can be some beautiful humanity on display, like this moment we see between this deli worker and we presume his girlfriend, and you know, and you know, the usual walking the streets mentality of New York. It's like, I don't got time for that. You know, like you can't. There's so much going on around the city. It can be overwhelming to take it all in. So you just kind of have to get that laser focus and be on your way. But it leads to these kind of interesting, you know, dichotomies where you have beautiful humanity mixed with you know, just get up and go. And Guru, you brought up a really interesting point. We were discussing this image prior.
Yeah, Romeo's image, this first image, just it really struck me because, one, without him even saying it, I knew that this is Katz. So I know this street and I know this place, and it's the thing of, okay, if it's Katz, then that means that this could be like a Jewish gentleman that works at Katz and he's coming outside, but he has a black girlfriend. You know what I mean? It's so New York. And it shows just the beauty of New York City. And at the same time, you have another couple that could be possibly a couple. They could be work, you know, buddies. They could be whatever. But their emotion of where we see he's focused really on the couple against the wall, which allows there's this slight blur on the motion of the walking, which allows you to it's sort of like motion in still camera is a very, you know, hard thing to do in a classy way. So I just love that we see that they're in motion, but they're engrossed in their world. There's another world right next to them. And then I know that specific avenue. So that combined with obviously the aesthetic of it, right? If we look at all these different colors that are in here and the fact that this is on film, you know, gives us that unique perspective on the contrast. I just think it's a great shot, especially with the light above the gentleman's head. You know, I'm into just lines and shades and shapes. That's really my thing. So I just love this, you know, especially against the brick.
And I love that you mentioned that, because we have a few images that we discussed together about you know, some themes that we like in certain images, like light, lines, and shapes. So now, Romeo, you've been working with a Brooklyn firehouse for a while on you know, this body of work you've been doing called Rescue 2, and this is one that, you know, we have a bunch of them to share here, but we talk about, you know, lines, shapes, and we start to see how, you know, even a very human element here without the rest of the body, right, it just draws our attention in different ways. So with all that being said, though, I have a quick question. I'm seeing some questions from people in the chat and things that people want to know. First off, let's get some tech questions out of the way. Film, like in terms of what film do you prefer, like for color, black and white? That's initially some questions. So Romeo, go ahead.
Color, I usually just stick with Portrait 400 and Tri-X 400 speed as well. Just keep it pretty simple there.
Right. And Guru, what do you prefer?
For black and white, I'm normally doing Tri-X 400. I've been getting into this Porter 400 because before that I was pretty much on this this 32. So for me, that's yeah, black and white. I try to stay with the 400 just because when I study, I do a lot of shooting from the hip. So I have to sort of guess and pre-focus, and I'm just so used to the 400, you know, and that's another challenge for me, maybe to step out and try something else. But normally just the 400.
Cool. So yeah, so between, you know, some interesting images we kind of grouped together here. So an image of Romeo's, again, of the guys from the firehouse and these amazing tattoos that they have. You know, the big human element, and you know, tattoos are something that are very personal for a lot of people. And then we talk about light, lines, and shapes, and this, and you know, the analog aesthetic. Kind of love, you know, the different the dichotomy of those images, right? Something that was obviously very human. Here we, you know, to me, this is something that I see, that arm kind of pattern. You know, there's humanity present in a lot of images, even that doesn't have humans present, right? And then Guru, you sent along another great one. Talk about human moments.
Right.
What can you tell us about this image?
This one I'm really proud of, because I mean, to give you a little bit of philosophy of why I shoot the way I shoot, or what I'm thinking about. You know, when I got into photography, it would have been very easy for me to sort of take the route of I want to shoot celebrities because I'm around them all the time. But it was a challenge for me to not shoot celebrities, or to not necessarily, not to say that I don't, but to say that the actual person in the photo is not what I want to be the main concentration. So I have this saying where I'm like, the subject matter doesn't matter, right? Because it's just, it's not my saying, but I love that saying, to where I want you to concentrate on the art of photography, on what I'm trying to get across in terms of those things that we talk about, light, lines, you know, shades. Are we putting dark things on light backgrounds, or light things on dark backgrounds, you know, all of those things. So this particular photo is, I'm super proud of, because when I put it up, I didn't really say what it was and people liked it. So it's really a trip to Jamaica, and the male arm, or the male fist, is Jay-Z's hand. And this is just a young kid while we're at the studio. We're actually at Tough Gong Studios, Bob Marley Studios. And this image was just so strong to me. Obviously, this was someone who was there bringing their child to meet him. But just capturing this one moment, I think, really focuses in on the hand being in focus. The child is enough in focus that you see the concentration in his eyes, but it's really about this connection and this thing that, you know, is this universal language everywhere I go across the world. You know, that fist bump of just saying hello, you know, carries everywhere. So this was just a strong image for me, especially because it is of Jay-Z, but it's not concentrating on it being Jay-Z's face.
Right. And I think this is interesting. And this is where, you know, maybe a little bit of both your backgrounds, we find it kind of interesting. There's some crossover. So Guru, you must often see, like, you know, being around a lot of celebrities, the reactions of fans, and you're always taking pictures. You always have a Leica with you. I know you, and Romeo, do you see something similar in the football world? You know, with like interactions of fans, do you document it, or is it more different for you?
No, it's a little different. When I'm usually around fans, it's usually just me either walking up into a stadium or post practice where I don't have time to grab my camera or something like that. I keep those moments a little more personal, where I can fully focus my attention to the person I'm interacting with. But I've never really tried to turn the camera towards fans a whole lot. That could be interesting.
Yeah, there's actually Lenny Kravitz is a big Leica photographer, and he did a book on called Flash, and it's all about him pointing his camera back at like paparazzis and fans. And there's some funny ones in there. It's a good book, and there's some really cool work in there. So yeah, maybe something to try out.
I mean, there's interesting things that you can get, you know, when you're going against the grain. So another great thing about this trip to Jamaica, we were there obviously filming a music video, and yeah, you know, I got my shots of Damian Marley and, you know, the Marley family and Jay.
Awesome.
But while they're walking through Trenchtown and the crowd of people is following them as they're filming this video, I go the opposite way, and it allowed me to walk through those really narrow, areas. If you've ever been to Trenchtown or ever been to Jamaica and understand like those back alleys, not only are they dangerous, but they're like really close together.
Right,
so
right.
it sort of like cleared the street and allowed me to go back and film those things while everyone's concentrating on the fact that they're on the main road. So I'm sort of following them, but it allowed me to walk through sort of like the back blocks and get a really interesting perspective of Trenchtown that probably isn't safe for most people.
That's really interesting. And also now I want to transition out to the next image, because it reminds me, you talk about walking like back areas, finding things where maybe a lot of people wouldn't find it in terms of aesthetic, in terms of and the photograph, the moment to capture. So Guru, this is an interesting one that, again, talking about light, lines, shapes, you turn this, go ahead and tell the story. It's a kind of an abstraction from regular and everyday thing.
This was in Hong Kong. So I was just out in Hong Kong shooting, and it was great because I wanted to shoot at night. So it was a night of the guys that I was with. We did a whole night of like the big things, right? We talk about certain things, like me and Evidence talk about this all the time, another great photographer that's a musician, but we talk about, okay, well, this shot I know is going to be big, and if I put this on the gram, people are going to love it, right? And that's not my focus. So this night in Hong Kong, I was on top of a building. We climbed to the top. We, pulled out the 28, the 21s. We got the big, let me take the city at night. I know this is what people want to see shot. So then I was walking around the city with a completely opposite mind state of like, I already have all that. So let me get those interesting things and this was just a gold mine. I walked past a light store where they didn't turn the blinds all the way, closed at night. So it's a closed store, but the lights are still on. And just the shapes just stuck out to me. So this is exactly what I want to do with photography. It's like capture those shapes and how many different textures that you have inside of these different circles. Also looking at the actual lines going across, horizontally, and then the lines that are created vertically. It just struck me as an image that just speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's something that, and it's funny with your background in music. I could totally, like, I feel like I definitely have records from like indie punk bands that like there's an image like this on the inside liner when that's like the background for the credits and all. It's a bit of a an artistic and abstract take on something that is to a lot of people innocuous, right? But that's part of the fun of photography, right? And finding interesting things in uninteresting situations. And now Romeo, both of you guys travel a lot. And Romeo, I think you believe that you took this in Kyoto.
Yeah, in Kyoto, by the Torii Gates, which is like a very famous tourist destination here in Japan. And this was actually super packed. If I waited like half a second more, there's probably a flood of people you see to start walking through. But I try to wait for one of those moments where everything cleared up to capture this image. And I really just love the symmetry, the lines, and how it kind of leads you towards this path. And the way the light shines through from the outside. I don't know. I thought there was something really beautiful about it.
Yeah, no, and the colors and the tones, and and I think again, that's a challenging thing to be when you're traveling. How many people end up with you get your snapshots and but there's other tourists in the shots, and it's hard to get a shot like this, right? I mean, like, this is actually really tricky. My photo teacher always used to joke with us and say, just buy a postcard because it's gonna be so much easier than getting your own shot like this. But you got something that's special, and using film, it has this really cool aesthetic and the color tones. And so yeah, it's really great with the lines and the way it leads us in to that sense of wonder. It's funny, I kept thinking that I wouldn't have thought that there were so many tourists around. You had me fooled.
Yeah, it was a very, very packed. It was springtime in Japan, which is cherry blossom season and the most busy season in Japan. So it was.
Which brings me, speaking of cherry blossoms,
yeah.
again, a really nice aesthetic, and looking at lines, looking at the way Guru, I think you were the one actually that told me, like, you call this out right away, the way the bird is kind of acting as our arrow, anchoring the lines.
Yeah, it's that moment. It's just like if you click the shutter, a millisecond before, a millisecond, everything could have changed, but just how perfectly the bird is aligned with that branch. There's those things that we look at and say, okay, well, we're studying lines and we're studying circles and objects, and those things don't really exist in nature, right? There's no such thing as a perfect line or a straight line. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like the looking of this angle, and then the bird is taking this angle. It's just something that strikes you, you know, and that's my thing of finding those real angles in life, or learning like the Fibonacci curve, you know, once you get beyond like, you know, rule of three and, you know, like just the basic things that you learn. It's like, okay, well, life bends, and human beings are never just completely vertical or completely this or that. Like, we move. So how do you capture those angles? I think for me is what struck me about this.
That's interesting. You know, I wonder, since you guys have doing different approaches, this is just maybe an observation on my side. Guru, you have a very methodical, very technical, and like analytical view of a lot of things and aesthetics. Romeo, would you describe yourself as kind of similar with that, or are you more like you know, more you just kind of follow the moment and just like embrace the candidness of some moments?
Yeah, I feel like I go mostly based on just feel. Sometimes something just brings me to take a picture. I don't know what it is, but a certain word is a certain moment, a certain like gaze I get, or whatever it is. Something just moves me to take the picture. Sometimes it could be a little bit more analytical, but I think most of the time it's just like a visceral feeling, not necessarily of the intellect. Just something brings me to take a picture.
Yeah, and here, so we have an image from Guru here, another subway shot, and you know, talk about interpretation, Guru. When I first asked you about this image, you had a very different interpretation than my thought was like, oh, it's exhaustion. It's maybe, you know, is it lethargy? Is it sadness? But you had a much more positive take on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, art is art, so everyone, that's the beauty of it, right? Everyone interprets different things at different times. And sometimes I almost question like whether or not I should put a caption up, you know, when I'm putting these photos up, to say like, because I'm directing where it's going. But for me, because I know the time of when I took this photo and why I took this photo, this was more of a celebration photo for me. This was me saying, let's celebrate the working man. Let's celebrate, you know, someone who has put in a whole day of work and is that tired and falls asleep on the train. It's not sort of a sad picture to me. It's like, hey, I put in my full day of work. That's the human interaction that I love about what photography does for me. It draws me into these moments of interacting with people, or just at least seeing them in a manner that's different from my life. So it's just, for me, this was a celebration. It was saying like, yo, I know people worship like, you know, rappers, athletes, you know, famous people or whatever, but this guy needs to be celebrated too, and captured and you know, written into history, that he put in, you know, he represents the millions of people that ride this train every day that do this exact same thing.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong statement. I like that a lot, and that's and I think now with Romeo's images, and I think you know, there's hard work and effort that gets put in all around, and some are undersung, right, unsung heroes, and some are you know, I think rightfully, you know, people sing the praises. Like, for example, firefighters are transitioning into a little bit more of Romeo's work with Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. Very human moment, right? We often think of these kinds of guys as, you know, heroes. They have to tough things out. How'd you get this image, Romeo?
Yeah, I had a really wide lens. I was kind of sitting at the front of the fire truck, and it was after a call. Some of the guys were super exhausted. It was pretty early in the afternoon, and I think some of these guys worked overnight. And after a fire, you can see one of the firefighters is kind of just asleep. Everyone's kind of in their own individual worlds. Usually they're all talking together, but you can kind of tell everyone's kind of tired, like in their own little worlds. And the guy in the back is looking outside, just checking out the streets of Brooklyn. And Jason over there is just kind of thinking about whatever he's thinking about, and another guy's asleep. And I don't know, just something about that moment of coming out outside of a fire and just kind of dealing with whatever you're kind of going through. Kind of drew me to take this picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very human and a candid moment. It's very like it's calm, and of course we all know that, you know, firefighters' lives, it's all calm until it's not, and then it's very intense. So yeah, and just to draw some different looks and different aesthetics and styles. You know, we talked about when you look deep within or look up, there's something different about it. Maybe something almost like spiritual.
Yeah,
Would you
yeah.
say?
Yeah, I think Einstein called it cosmic religion, and it's just kind of this notion of just the feeling you get when you look up and just like imagine the universe and all its beauty. It's kind of one of those visceral feelings again. And this was my friend Mordecai, just sitting outside a bar actually in New York City, and I just caught him in this moment, just kind of looking up, gazing at the stars.
Yeah, it's contemplative and it's kind of universal, right? It's like we all do it at times. You know, whether it's you know, on the streets of New York or elsewhere around, and even around the world. It's like kind of a universal thing where you look every so often, you look up to the cosmos, and whether you're seeking something or just like thinking something, you know, it's something that's, yeah, I think we all do from time to time. Maybe seeking something, or Guru, how'd you come? This was in Hong Kong as well.
This was in Hong Kong. Yeah, this was again that same night of just roaming around at night, you know, and this guy was just literally just laying there staring up. And it's weird that he's not sleeping. You know, I caught this, and for some reason he closed his eyes at that exact moment when I took the shot. But he was literally just sitting there, you know, laying there. I don't know if he was working or on a break or whatever, but you know, it was the same feeling. It was just like, this is odd. He's just using this kid's playground as you know, as just his own personal space at this time. So I don't know, something about it just caught me.
Yeah, yeah. But again, we look at that looking up aesthetic. It's really interesting. And then I'm glad we have this as a dichotomy, this perspective, right? For now, we're through Romeo's lens, looking up, but looking up to something that I think a lot of us look up to, right? Firefighters, again, back with Rescue 2. You know, here now we see them in an actual fire, and this is intense. And this is, Romeo, please, what can you tell us about this night and this shot?
Yeah, this was actually one of my first nights taking photos at Rescue 2, and I think it was like either 3 or 4 in the morning after a couple calls that night, and it was one of the first fires. You can see there's smoke coming out of the window there, and there's the ladder on the side of the building leading up to the window, and I just kind of saw this firefighter kind of silhouetted by the light they're shining into the building, and I had a 50 lens on, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to get the shot because it was pretty dark and it had very, very little light. But I was glad I was able to capture kind of this moment of the firefighter kind of silhouetted in this moment of just me looking up, looking at them do their job and just jumping and burning buildings, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild job. It's a wild photo. You know, like it's really, really impressive stuff. And again, go ahead, Guru.
This is amazing. I'm sorry to jump in, but
No.
To comment on this photo is amazing. Like, we see the situation, and of course we're the feeling draws us into what it is to be there in that moment as a firefighter, right? And the photo transfers that perfectly. But if you again, this is my analytical mind, but if you study this, the amount of switching of shade because of the lighting and the balance of the lines is amazing. So where the smoke is coming out of the top, you know, of course that's all black. Then that's moving to this gray thing in the background, which is actually the way that the clouds are looking now because there's smoke there. Then, you know, over to the left, there's that one thing of whether or not that's another light that's, you know, shining in, that they're shining, or whether or not that could be sort of like a moon. You know, it's illuminating that, just that one piece of the smoke, which allows us to get this really white part. Then we go into another shade of gray all the way to this black all the way at the top. Then we also have like the triangle shape at the top of this sort of like rectangle thing that's also almost like, at this point, if you look all the way at the right, the ladder that's there is almost like what a flying buttress does. You know what I mean? So it's just like, then at the bottom of the photo, we still have that rectangle with the light, a normal light coming out of it, but it's because of the fire. So and that shade, that light is there amongst all this black. So, you know, for me, it's the shading, it's the lines, it's the emotion that it's bringing about. and just to have that capture at that specific moment, this is an amazing, amazing photo.
Yeah, I have to echo everything you're saying in terms of it's fantastic. And again, we talk of our heroes, right? And looking up to them. Firefighters, I think, are most widely praised for doing what they do. But now we have another to kind of go a little bit different route with another one of Romeo's photos from his body of work. But they're also human, right? They're also so they're members of the community. And they have to go. I love this image. It's like a blend of street photography and editorial work. It's humorous, it's lighthearted, but also just a reminder of how these guys are everyday people. So I'm also a big fan of this one as well. And Romeo, we got a question actually, a quick question of how did you get access to the firehouse and to Rescue 2?
Yeah, so at the time I was actually playing for the Giants, and two of the firefighters, Jason Bresler and Cameron Peak, came to speak to us about resilience and how to kind of battle through tough times or whatever it may be, and how we can use resiliency and mindfulness on the football field. And I was hurt at the time, so I was on the sideline just kind of talking to them and just kind of picking their brains. And then they invited me to their firehouse, which I thought was super cool because I was like, being invited to the New York Firehouse and New York FDNY is one of the most incredible organizations in the country. Mm-hmm. And I went and spent an afternoon with them. And when I got into the building, it's this kind of like very lived-in building in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and it looked like a museum to me. Like the walls were very had so much character. Even the wood, everything was just very. I don't know, something about that place just looked very beautiful. And I found out they were actually going to be moving into a new like state-of-the-art facility right down the street. They didn't know when. It could have been a year, it could have been 2 years. They were kind of like, they were just all wondering. But I wanted to kind of create something for them to keep, to kind of cherish that building. And then the project turned to other things from there. But I basically kind of wanted to, kind of secure the building in photographic form for them so they can have that forever, because they could have torn the building down and that part of history would have been gone. It's been up, I think, like 100 years or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess, we can look at that as maybe some of the, we all, I think it's universally understood, especially the three of us and many more people, that we all love New York. Maybe one of the downsides, though, of always developing and always putting up new stuff is the old stuff goes away. Right. So it's great that you're able to capture all kinds of stuff for these guys. But again, just playing off of these similar aesthetics, Guru, this image you shot, over in Hong Kong, and again, like kind of the common man, the common working, hard worker, whether you're part of the community and a firefighter and just getting your groceries, or the market worker who's in charge of selling the groceries. I think there's some great, again, talking about lines and stuff, and also with this other image that you also have, form and the shapes that it takes. And yeah, a lot of work with lines and with this lady as their subject right here.
So a lot of the stuff that I try to go out and shoot is just that, right? Where, again, I'm very interested in just everyday life of normal people. So when I used to travel the world, there's a big thing that, promoters or someone, whoever is, hosting you or whatever you're doing, they want to show you the finest things. They want to show you like, I'm going to take you to this restaurant. I'm going to show you this and show you that. And it's just like, okay, after a certain point, I've seen all of those things. So I want to walk around with my camera by myself and just actually see wherever I am in the world. And you get to really see like, okay, this woman is just like, I'm definitely on break from work and I can just sit right here. But it's really like her body, again, demonstrating that thing that we're never in a straight line. Our body is always curved in some form or fashion. And I think just the juxtaposition of what she's sitting on, the lines that's created, and then obviously like the web, of whatever that is in the background of the wood, just creates just interesting just lines to me. It just caught my eye as I was walking by. And, again, it just speaks to what speaks to me. So I see a lot in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we've got a lot of questions, and I want to, if you're just joining us, or if you joined a little late, we're here with Young Guru and Romeo Okwara. Young Guru, the very well renowned audio engineer and producer, Romeo Okwara of the Detroit Lions, both very talented photographers as well. I want to do a very quick lightning round of a couple of quick questions with quick answers, because we're getting a lot of them in the chat and in the Q&A. So people have asked, what's your go-to lens focal length?
My go-to lens focal length for street is 28 and 50.
Romeo?
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. 28 and 35 probably.
Mm-hmm. And what film cameras do you primarily use?
M6 for me.
M6.
There you go. Still one of the most popular cameras to this day, even though it's been long discontinued. And let's see, we talked about a little bit about film stocks already. And what's your preferred focal, not just focal length, but the you use a Summilux, a Summicron, f2, f1.4?
I use everything. I switch lenses a lot, so it just depends. But like right now on my M10 is the 28. What do I have on here right now?
Summicron.
The 3.4. No, so this one is just is just the my regular M. Boom. Where's this one at?
Romeo, how about you?
I'm sorry.
I use for the 50. I use the 1.4, which I think is a Summilux.
Yeah, Summilux.
So yeah, my 28 Summicron is probably what I have on the most.
Gotcha. And then the last quick question: how did you guys each get into Leica and shooting Leica?
Oh, that's a huge story. That's a super long story for me.
All right, hang on. I'm going to put this image up because this is going to segue us into the next conversation. But what's your Guru? What's your abridged how you got into Leica, as quick as you can make it?
Instagram came out, and I saw a bunch of my music friends who were putting up really good photography. And then I asked D Nice. I was like, well, why does your photos look different than everyone else? And without him getting too long-winded, he was just, shoot with a Leica. So I researched everything. So I just got completely into the history of the brand. I'm also, me being an engineer, I'm very much into the history of how all of this developed and why it developed, and the pivoting that went on within the company to go from, microscopes to, actual cameras and lenses, and we want to do film, and the whole thing of how it all developed. And that the history of the brand got me into it. And then I started just, because of that, following certain people and studying certain people. So I would spend a lot of time, studying the greats of who everyone's going to send you to, Cartier-Bresson and to Robert Capa, which is going to lead you to Magnum. And then you're going to figure out all this other stuff. And it's just like, who are all the people that you really, where are all the black photographers at? So that leads me to like Eli Reed and just people like that. So then I started to delve into, well, what do all these people, why are they famous? What is it that they brought to the game? And then how can I be different through this lens of a Leica? So it connects me sort of to the history of the brand, but it also really is, without sounding like the selling points, it's really about the fact that I'm a 6'5" black guy that's trying to take photos throughout the world. Not just in New York City is that hard, but that's extremely hard throughout the world. So the Leica allows me to be discreet. It allows me to be quiet. It allows me to not have this huge camera in my hand to look, scream as I'm walking down the street, I'm about to take your photo. Or it also allows it to be like, when I'm off doing other things, I can just always have it on my hip. And when I see that moment, I just always have it ready. So that's really why I went with that choice of Leica. It's a thing of the history of the brand, the quality of the lenses, and the size of the camera.
Awesome. Yeah. And, shout out to DJ D Nice. Great talent and great photographer as well. Romeo, how about you? How'd you get into shooting Leica?
For me, it was kind of the same thing, just like studying the great photographers. And then also a lot of photographers are people that I really, I'm a fan of, like Lenny Kravitz. You said he's a big Leica shooter. I'm a huge fan of him and his music. Andre Wagner, who's another great photographer I love in New York City. He's and I just kind of found these common themes with Leica. And then when I started shooting with the camera, the images were incredibly beautiful, and I love the way they came out. So it just kind of stuck with me. I wanted the best.
It makes a lot of sense. You know, there's some things like, and again, I think there's a lot of parallels in the music world. Not that, you know, there's reasons like in the guitar world, a Fender Tele and a Fender Strat are so well regarded, and there's a reason Rickenbacker 4001 in the bass world is, and I'm not going to jump really into the weeds, we're just going to lose the whole audience, but there's reasons that these notable tools come so well regarded, and I think you can find a lot of parallel, like the M6. You guys have M6s because, hey, it's like the de facto these days for film photographers. So diving back into some images, Romeo, more of your images from the firehouse, and we put this one together right after the one that Guru shot, where we see a natural, like this resting position and this kind of composition of the human body, you know, and you have this, I forget this guy's name, but if you could tell me, and he was kind of walking you through some like all the images on the wall, right?
Yeah, that's Mark Hershey. He was kind of telling me about like a little bit of the history of the walls and like how all these pictures kind of ended up on the walls. And it's just like a history of all the different firefighters that have come through the building. There's different newspaper shots kind of framed into the walls. And I really love that one that says 3 died here, because that's just so real, and part of what they have to go through each and every single day. And you see the emotion of his face, just smoking a cigar, drinking some coffee, sitting in his chair. Just something about that composition and the emotion of his face kind of speaks for itself. And I really love, like you said, the wedding ring he has on his finger, just kind of brings it to that he is a human, he has a family, and it is also his job.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a family man because of the wedding ring, and also, but yes, this is the reality of firefighters, that they may have to, you know, do what they have to do and end up in these pictures on the wall, which, you know, I'm sure a mix of happy memories, but also the heartache, you know, that these guys have to go through. And again, just talking about, you know, family man, you know, the dichotomy between between the human moments and the job, right? The fire truck, you know, kids love fire trucks, but it's I love these images and the tones that you get. Got another question actually. For both of you, while we go through some of these images, do you guys find that you take a more mindful approach when shooting film versus shooting digital?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think my film photography improved my digital photography. So, you know, film is going to slow you down. It's going to get you to the point where you really notice the moment. You know, I've seen and especially in my world before I got into photography, you'd watch people take photos, you know, at say concerts or when people are walking, and you just paparazzi photos where it's just like, and that's literally all you hear as you're walking down a carpet, where the person is just shooting 200 shots, you know, and then they go through and pick the best one. So again, I'm influenced by the people that I was around. I would watch D Nice when he was shooting, and he wouldn't take a million shots. He would be having a conversation with somebody, and he'd notice the moment come, and then he'd simply just go click, and it would be this incredible shot. You know, same thing with you know, Van Styles. When I was, you know, would walk out with him, it wouldn't be this thing of let me take a million photos. He would walk and find, you know, the right moment. So my film photography really taught me how to slow down and not be scared. You know, I was always scared of, oh, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss it. That's happening. That's, you know, and with digital, you're almost like always chasing it. With film, it's just that thing, that purity of slowing you down, catch the right moment, make sure everything is correct. You know, it for me produces better results than like the rapid pace, just let me guess, you know, or sometimes I see, you know, people just and then choose the best out of 100.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I'll just add one thing, that I think film can sometimes also help disarm your subjects a little bit. I think some people who maybe are hesitant to have their picture taken, if you're using a film camera, they find it even more kind of innocent and less intimidating. Romeo, did you find that at the firehouse with some of these images?
Yeah, for sure. When I'd go in there, it kind of be like I wouldn't start taking pictures immediately. We kind of hang out, catch up, maybe go grab some lunch or something before I even brought the camera up. And by that point, they're already being themselves. They don't have their guard up. And with the film camera, it's not, if I had a digital camera, I'd take the picture and they can actually see the photo immediately. And there's something about, I don't know, it changes the experience when you're looking down at your camera, you're looking at the image immediately. There's like an element of waiting for negatives to be developed that I kind of love. And it kind of lets you focus on what's actually going on rather than the outcome of the picture.
Yeah. So again, same thing, and unsurprisingly, it's a different experience with shooting film, and it's awesome to see you guys work and hear you guys talk about this. You know, as someone who, I love film, I haven't shot much in recent times, but there's such a draw to it, and you know, for us digital users, you know, I still think that, you know, shooting a digital M still slows you down, just not quite like a film M will make you take your time, make your shots count. But speaking of the images, love this one, another very candid moment, and just you know, showing how these firefighters, how they're you know, pillars of the community, and helping out even like a kid when his, you know, bike tire is kind of low. So we've got a few images here in sequence of more of your images, Romeo. There's definitely like there's a sense of brotherhood with firefighters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They wake up and spend 24-hour shifts. Sometimes they spend more time in the building than with their families, so they get really, really close. I mean, they're running to a burning building together, 4 or 5 of them at a time, and you have to have this like trust and this sense of brotherhood to be able to do that with somebody. Like, they're cooking together, which is obviously a big part of being in a firehouse, dining together at the table. And that's kind of where they spend most of their day, just like sitting around the table and having conversations where they're talking about what just happened and whatever fight they've been in, or just shooting the crap about what's going on in their lives and their lives at home. It's kind of a very communal area.
Yeah, and I can imagine it, like, but then you also have like the fun camaraderie kind of human moments, but then, you know, human moments that can feel heavy. I mean, you know, we don't know exactly what was happening here, but you know, it just seems, you know, it could be even taking a breather a moment, but it's just because they're firefighters, you know what they have to potentially deal with. It can feel so heavy, and the use of black and white on these images, the use of analog. I know you have some that are digital, but like, you know, great tones, great look overall. It really conveys a lot of the emotion of kind of that. It's that hurry up and wait mentality, right?
Yeah, so this one's actually digital, taken with the M10. But yeah, this was one of the first nights I spent there. Jason was just kind of taking a moment to himself before he stepped out of the fire truck when we got back, and he was just kind of taking a moment to himself. And after this, he actually lit a cigar and just started smoking it. You don't know what's kind of going on through their head, but they were just kind of living in their own universes.
Awesome, yeah. By the way, everyone, keep the questions coming, and I know we're probably going to go a little long, but please stick with us because we've got still a few more images to show, and we want to answer some more questions for you guys have. Another one, is this one film or digital? Because this has me a little fooled.
This is film.
Okay, great tones, great tonality. Really love the reflection and the texture on the left side of the image. This is love this image. It's really, I can't say enough good things about it. But Guru, I wanted to draw some parallels here. This image we have next for you from Hong Kong. You have kind of an interesting perspective. You know, you guys have an interesting take with a mix of, say, street photography / reportage style, which I'm so glad we're able to showcase this, and analog. Also great tones here, Guru.
Thank you.
Tri-X, right?
Yeah, Tri-X. Again, it's that pattern that's created of the people walking down the street are actually, they walk on the line, you know, and it's almost weird that's the first thing that struck me, of the cars going by and the people are actually they just walk on the line. But I found myself wanting to do, because I was doing so many vertical shots because of the structure of Hong Kong and how everything is just so like tall with the buildings, that I started to concentrate on doing like some more horizontal shots. And this is one of the ones that I was just like, it really gives you the feel of what it's like to be on just a normal street. You know, there's so much going on. The city is so packed. and you see how many like just different businesses there are on this one street. You know, again, it's just something that struck me about the angle of what's on the ground and the way the people are actually just walking, like they stay on those lines.
Mm-hmm. And another question that we got, two questions I'll roll into one. For your analog photography, for both of you, and I'll have you tee off first. Do you develop any film yourself, or do you send it out anywhere in particular? And then the other question is, how much post processing do you do, either with scans, or do you try to make your digital files look like film, anything like that?
Yeah, with my film stuff, I don't develop myself. So in New York, I use Dougal on 23rd Street. Okay. And obviously in LA, I use Sammy's.
Gotcha.
So I'll get my negatives back and then just scan everything. You know, I'm very particular about, as much as I can, like knocking off as much dust as I, you know, if I scan something and I see like one speck of dust on it, I'll redo it. You know, like I'm very particular about that. I hate when there's dust or anything, you know, in my scans. I try to scan at the highest, you know, that I can. And then post-processing, I try on film not to do a lot of post-processing. I want it to look like exactly, you know, what I did. You know, for digital, obviously there's things that I do where I'm just like, oh, okay, sometimes I like to play with, you know, the way that the image came out. But for film, I love just to keep it raw, you know, and to figure out like, okay, well then I need to get better at looking at this so that I can really tell, you know, what I captured on the film.
Gotcha. Romeo, how do you feel? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, for me, sometimes I develop my, but most of the time I send it out to a lab, either Color House in New York or Darkroom in LA. But what was the other question?
So if you don't do any processing yourself, which is fine, but in terms of post processing, do you find you're still working with your film files a lot when they're scanned, or do you mostly just keep it as is? And do you ever like try to make your digital files mimic your film files, anything like that?
I feel like I try to get my digital files to look somewhat. They're never going to look like film files, I don't think, but I try to get them as close as I can. But I play around usually just on Lightroom with like shadows or contrast. I don't mess around too much with the files, but I do correct it a little bit.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. Thanks everyone for asking these questions. These questions have been great.
I think that's the interesting mentality, right? Of when you're shooting digital and, you know, you go in Lightroom, it's almost like that exact same thing of I'm trying to get this digital thing to look like what it would have looked like on film. Like, yeah. I think that's the mentality.
And so this one, Romeo, I described this, I think I joked to you, this is like your Renaissance painting image, because there's so many things going on. It could almost be like a Where's Waldo, you know, element. Can you walk us through this image that you made?
Oh, you mean me? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry. I meant Guru. That's
all good. That's fine. Yeah. Again, this is like one of my favorite photos because it's just me roaming through Hong Kong, but I found sort of the scene that I had been looking for a very long time, of me trying to practice taking self-portraits in very interesting ways. So the shape of this store, of whatever it was, because there were so many different lines, right? Because of the horizontal and the vertical lines, because the door has lines inside of it. That's sort of what drew me to it. And then the stuff that's inside of the store are creating other lines, right? But then my real point of doing this was to put myself in the mirror. So if you look at the right side window on the bottom and you kind of look in there, yeah, that's me. So that was the whole point of me trying to take this self-portrait. But then what developed was this like really interesting thing that right next to me, there's a statue that almost looks like and parallels like where I am, my height. Then if you look in like the bottom left of the photo, there's this woman standing there and you kind of just see her head and you see the statue that kind of looks like her head. Then if you look in the top where the guy who's sitting there in the top, his position, there's a statue next to him towards his left that almost mirrors what he's doing. So, you know, I wish I could take credit and say, yo, I set up this incredible, but really all I was trying to do was put myself in the middle of that mirror, and that just happened while I took the photo, right? Yeah. So again, and I didn't even notice the gentleman that is like, if you really, really concentrate, there's a gentleman walking and it looks like the horses are looking at him, and whatever those figures are almost looking or maybe bowing to the gentleman that is in that particular part, but then that part itself is even boxed out. So there's just like boxes on boxes on boxes in this one photo, and the lines and the tones and the mere fact that it's just me trying to take my own little, personal selfie. And that's what came about. But it's that slow down moment. It's the thing of, there was another photo that drew me to this one photo, which hopefully we'll have enough time to get into later. But this sort of is one of my favorite, just images that I've ever made, because, a lot of the times when things are happening, it's not just the fact of, especially in street photography, it's not just the fact of, oh, well, I'm out there. It's that things are happening all the time. And you have to just catch those particular things. But the fact that you are out there ready, your hand is on the camera, those images come because you're ready to go.
Right. Yeah, and then they can come together. We have so many layers here and so many things going on, and that's his life, right? There's a million stories going on at any given time. And I think we have, is this a sequence that kind of led you to that, that subject?
Yeah. This gentleman, I was eating in a restaurant, and I just saw this, and it's one of those things in life that draws me in, because I'm always at that point where I can't wait until I'm old enough that this is my day every day, where I just wake up and all I have to do is go sit outside with no shirt on and read the newspaper, right? That's heaven for me. So just this gentleman just drew me in, and I took this picture, and I think he felt my presence when I took this photo. So then I turned around and walked away, and then I'm turning back to look at him, and he's looking at me, and I couldn't resist, just snapping another photo of him. So it's just one of those things of him being there is what allowed me to see that building in the back, which led to the previous photo.
Yeah, it's interesting where things will take us, and yeah, some fun human moments here with street photography. And I'm going to go a little faster. I know we're going to go a little long, but Romeo, another interesting human moment that you shared with us. This was a Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah, Dead and Company. I think it was during the show, or maybe during an intermission. I just saw this couple just kind of on the floor. Everyone made this like kind of space around them, and they were just like in their own little world, loving on each other. And I thought it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, and being analog, it has a kind of timeless look to it. Same with these different shots. Guru, you said this was from the Netherlands?
Yeah, it's in Amsterdam. It's one of these exhibit things where the water comes down, people walk in, the water comes back up, and no one was really paying attention to it. And again, it was one of those things of where I purposely decided not to shoot it head on so that you could kind of get a little bit of depth. And then other than that, I was just really worried about the shutter speed, to make sure that I froze the water, but not so much that it's just a pure bubble, so that you still know, you get this sort of motion thing, but it's freezing the water just a little bit. And then it's just interesting because it's like you get that there's two figures in there, but again, it speaks to my thing of you can't see them. It's just, it's just the subject matter doesn't matter. It's about the image itself.
Right. And I just like the dichotomy of the quick back and forth of like, it's like two together in a pit and a pen, and two together in a, it's like these kind of interesting moments. But again, talk about human moments. And Romeo, when you sent this one along, talk about the sheer joy, right? Sometimes when you capture like kids that you'll never see, I think you said this was actually from a bus, or he was in a bus.
Yeah, he was sitting in a bus. I was either in a taxi or just walking down the street, and it just kind of reminded me of just like those moments when I was a child, just like looking out the window, or riding a bus, looking out the window, and just like having these like little interactions with strangers in their cars, and those like split moment relationships you have. And I just took this picture because it reminded me of that, and I just love his whole attitude.
Yeah, and again with being film, it because of the color cast and like the look to it, it has a very timeless nature to it. I think that's one of the things I love about shooting film. It's like you could have told me this image was like from years ago, and I would like, okay, I believe it. And again, sticking with some different looks and dichotomy between human moments. Guru, what can you tell us about this one? Was this a more recent photo?
Yeah, this one is actually probably the only digital one that I have in here. This is, again, me sitting, I love riding the train. So this is in Newark, New Jersey, me waiting for the train to go into New York on New Jersey Transit. And I'm just sitting there, and I just was doing something with my camera, and this woman just happened to come and stop in that exact frame. And I just couldn't resist just taking the photo, because it's just, you know, again, daily life of I'm on my way to work. But it's just something about her and the way she's sitting in that window just really, really spoke to me. And, you know, I ended up just really loving this image.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tense, actually.
Yeah.
Now, and there's another question from the audience. Both of you being public figures, right? Does that ever get in your way in your approach to making photos? Is it ever a hindrance, or does it help you in some ways?
It hinders me because I love street photography. So if I get noticed when I'm on the street, it kind of takes away from me being able to capture moments without interrupting the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. Again, I tell these stories of, you can kind of tell New York City by the streets and what goes on in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite things is, like, say, you know, Van comes to the city, he's like, hey, let's go shoot. You know, when we're sort of up in the 40s, where a lot of the, you know, music studios are, or record companies or things like that are, and we're walking down the street, I'm kind of getting noticed a little more than him.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we move and get down into the lower numbers, where a lot of the art and things are produced in the city, he gets noticed a lot more than me. You know, so it's like, it's those weird things. But for me, it sort of takes away. But I learned through shooting with certain people, especially Van, to just, you know, be brazen about what I do. I'm now at that point where I don't care. I will just walk up to people and just sort of take the shot and then apologize later.
and Romeo, how about you?
It kind of depends where I am, but most of the time, I usually just blend in and take the photo. Every now and then, people might notice me, but for the most part, there's no hindrance.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good to know. Sorry, Guru, I accidentally skipped past one of these. This was a one you just sent me, so you didn't tell me the story on this guy. Where was this one taken?
This is at Hellshire Beach. Again, this is one of those things of while Jay-Z and Damian Marley are shooting a music video, I'm moving away from wherever their action is. So I'm walking through Hellshire Beach, and this guy was just literally sitting here about to pass me a drink. And that's literally what he's doing. So it's just, you know, I just thought the timing of it, the sun, everything that was going on, it was sort of towards the end of the shoot, because we're losing light. You know what I mean? And we had started a bonfire. But again, the thing of walking away from where everyone might be thinking the energy should be focused. So while everyone else is over here doing this, I'm walking away, and I get to capture, you know, this specific image. And Hellshire Beach is just one of my favorite places in Jamaica.
Cool. And I have a question, but are either you guys going to putting together or have put together a photo book at any point, or any plans for?
I'm thinking about it, especially with the firefighter series. I do want to make a book for them to kind of keep.
That'd be cool.
I haven't as of yet, and again, yeah, I'm thinking about it, and you know, everyone tells me every day to do it. It's just, I would do it just to do it for fun. You know, a lot of my photography is the art that I don't sell, because I'm involved in selling other forms of art. So it's that thing that is pure for me. You know, music is my love. I love to do it, but I'm also involved in the business of music, right? Mm-hmm. Which becomes the headache. But you go through that headache because you love what you do, and you're grateful that you can do it. Photography has been that thing that I just do from a pure standpoint. I've never looked to sell it. I've never looked to, like, I don't know. Eventually, yeah, you know, I'll do those things, but it's not for the money. It's not for that sort of thing. It's just to start teaching myself to go through that process. So as a photographer, you can understand what the process of creating a book is.
Right. And this one, I'm stopping here as I see, pausing on this one. We got some people in the chat identifying that this is Pete Halverson in this photo, friend of the brand. You know, so Romeo, you shot this of Pete in kind of his natural habitat.
Yeah, I was hanging out with Pete a couple months ago, and at Manhattan Beach, which is where he lives, and is by the pier that he's always shooting. So I kind of want to take a portrait of him by the pier that he's always taking photos at, and I thought it was a special moment.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, you know, we as photographers often are the ones that don't get photographed, right?
Right.
And I think this actually speaks volumes, though, about the Leica community. I find that most Leica users are very welcoming to newcomers, and there's a sense of camaraderie and people that want to welcome you into the fold, because there's only so many of us around, and while we grow, it's still it's good to have people that you can kind of rely on to learn from. So Pete's a great, so good big shout out to Pete Halverson. I always like when he's in these things. Now we get to show a picture of him. But we have a few more pictures to go through before we wrap up. And I appreciate everyone sticking with us this long. I know we're going a little lengthy. But Romeo, here's one of, in the locker room, which you don't get to shoot that much there, do you?
No, I don't really shoot much in the locker room. It depends if it's media day or something. I'll bring my camera and take pictures of the guys. But this was just, I think, before an away game, we were traveling and we usually dress up. And Gino Smith is just getting his Gino Smith and Olivia Vernon here, and Olivia is just tying his tie before we get on the road, which is just I think it just kind of gets a sense of the brotherhood we kind of have with each other in the locker room. I don't know, just something simple as just tying a teammate's tie for him is one of those moments I thought was real special.
Yeah, and I mean, you can draw a lot of similarities in brotherhood among teammates, brotherhood like we saw in the firefighters. There's some cool moments to be had there. And as a kind of another more personal shout out for you, a different your literal brotherhood, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's my younger brother who actually just got drafted by the Lions this past Friday. So it's really special that I'll be able to play with him.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations indeed.
Yeah, so this was a little bit after he had surgery on his ankle, broke his fibula and tore some ligaments in his ankle, and he was at my apartment in Detroit, and I was helping him do some of his rehab exercises, and I just thought it was a really special moment for him, and yeah.
That's really good. I mean, and you photograph this on film?
Yeah, this is on film. Tri-X, I think with a 28, just in my apartment, and he's just doing his ankle exercises. Literally, we know that we'll be playing with each other in a couple months.
And do you find that, and this can be a question for both of you, do you find that shooting film would make an intimate moment like this easier, or do you find that that's just inherent in the M rangefinders?
Absolutely. I think, I don't know, it's just one of those things where I take the picture. I kind of like forgetting about the images. It makes me feel like a Christmas present every time I get my negatives back. But yeah, I just took this picture, and I just knew something just kind of called me to take this picture. I thought it was kind of just one of those important moments, just like kind of behind the scenes. You don't really get to see what all goes into the process, especially as an athlete. This was obviously one of the biggest downtimes of his career, and it just kind of helps tell the story when he comes back and how he's gonna, I guess, kind of recover from that injury.
And I think there's an Easter egg in this photo. Is that a Leica I see on the table?
Definitely, maybe a couple. Yeah, there's a Leica down there.
Great. And Guru, do you find that you turn the camera on the family and loved ones, or are they more receptive to it when you're shooting film or shooting a rangefinder, or how does it find you?
I mean, all the time I shoot my family, just from understanding like what that means historically and being able to have those things that pass down to generations. But I mean, to delve into your question, I think that is the beauty of the rangefinder system, that it doesn't matter for me like if the actual technical part, because that's the beauty of the digital part of the rangefinder, is that it's still those three basic things of you're really just worried about shutter speed, your aperture, and what your ISO is. The same way you're selecting what film you want, and then you're worried about your aperture and your shutter speed. So those parts of it, I think the exercise for me is still the same, whether or not I'm looking through the viewfinder of a digital or analog. I'm still worried about the same things of where am I placing someone, what's going on in the photo itself, and how am I capturing that. So those things never go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Although it's kind of funny, it's just add to what both of you guys are saying with when you point the camera at your family. I find that my family gets a bit impatient when I shoot film, though, because they're like, I'm never going to see these pictures, are they? Am I?
I do
We
get
gotta,
that a lot. I get that a lot.
yeah. So we're gonna go. I know we're going plenty over time, but that's okay. We're gonna go a little almost like lightning round, a little faster through some of these images. Guru, we got a few more of yours. We talk about human moments here,
Yeah.
and you're traveling. You know, this is something very candid, and I think maybe with a different kind of camera, you would have had a tougher time making a photo like this.
Absolutely. This was definitely that was still in Hong Kong, and it was in my hotel, and I'm looking down at this gentleman with his child, and just snapped that moment just because it just appealed to me. But it's just something where you see these little moments between people, and you want to make sure that you capture them. You can't really see his whole face, you can't see the baby's face, but it tells the whole story of like father and child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go, we paired some of these images together for the visual aesthetics, how they match, as well as some of the content. You know, you mentioned how Hong Kong is a very vertical space. It's built up in such a unique way. To a lot of people that have been there or seen a lot of pictures of it, it's easily identifiable. I think this one is as well. I'm going to go a little quicker through some of these, and just because we put together this verticality, you know, the beauty in simplicity. I love the minimal aesthetic of this, you know, kind of a beautiful interior design photo here. So as well as, you know, kind of breaking up that verticality, this ball photo that you took with the crystal, and, you know, all of a sudden bending it and shaping it from one to another, and to another human moment, which I saw that globe shape that to this person. Now, this was a street shot that you made, right?
Yeah, this is everyday life in New York City subway, and it's just a way of me. One, when I'm taking picture of someone that's homeless, I'm really trying not to do the like, oh, I'm degrade, just showing you the ills of society. We've seen that a million times. It's about like, how are you making this one thing interesting? And it's the fact of like, this guy's literally sleeping this way, and then the angles that creates. But that's what drew me in, because he's literally asleep. He's not just bending over. He's not throwing up. He's not, he's sleeping that way. So just another thing to be able to capture that on film, and just that everyday life in New York City. This is what you walk past.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of things you walk past, you had a very brief anecdote about this one though.
This one is great for me because it gets to show, like, to me, a mistake where I don't feel as though the shot is completely focused the way that I wanted it to be focused, but the moment was happening so fast and I'm moving, so that it's just like I was trying to catch the fact that it's just interesting to me that she's standing in the middle of this garbage thing, with this white hat on, doing what I have no idea what she's doing in the middle of the garbage. So it's me trying to say, like, everything doesn't come out perfect in film. Sometimes I miss some things of focusing, but it's just, I'm not ashamed to show you my mistakes. So I just wanted to make sure I put one in where I'm showing people I don't always get the shot, and that's part of the training, and that's part of the joy of film. It's just like, when you get it back, like, did I get it or maybe I didn't?
Yeah, it's such an amazing teacher, like to us all, especially when you have to wait to find out that you made a mistake. It can be a little bit of a hit to the ego, but I think sometimes we all need that once in a while too. And again, another human moment that you captured over in Hong Kong, similar marketplace. Another gentleman kind of catching a personal moment, a bit of a snooze.
Yeah, again, besides the obvious of the lines and what's going on, it's just catching that moment of him, literally being asleep at work. So, just those personal human moments of, this is my nap time.
Yeah. And, speaking of, images that are made around the globe, we've seen images that were made, a little while ago, but for some recent stuff, Romeo, you shared with me something you were just working on just recently with more film shots, while under quarantine. So you've been pointing the camera at, in personal spaces for people, right?
Yeah, for sure. This is actually one of my friends, JP, just kind of laying by the pool, and it's kind of this moment he's kind of taking to himself. And I think I ran out of the hot tub and like grabbed my camera and got the shot. Thankfully, stayed in the same spot. But yeah, just something about this moment. I guess you said something about waiting. I don't know what it is, but during this time of quarantine, you just kind of get these moments to yourself where you're just kind of sitting around thinking about, I guess, maybe like the gravity of the situation, whatever's going on. I just thought this was a really good moment.
Yeah, and again, I think these have some timelessness because of the film. It's like you can see the grain, but film has such a great structure to its grain. It never, when I see it, I don't say I wish it wasn't there. I just accept that it's there, and it's part of the aesthetic and the photo. So I really love these few shots that you share with us that you made just recently. So we wanted to include these because it's really cool. How have you guys been? Staying motivated and keeping those creative juices flow while under quarantine in these recent times.
Yeah, for me, it's just like just looking at everyone's work, or just looking at past photographers I love. This shot even is kind of like an ode to like the great like fashion photographers I really love, the Avedons and Urban Pens. I really love the work. I think fashion photography is one of the best forms of like self-expression, and yeah, I just kind of captured. This is one of my friends. She was just kind of in the grass, just dancing around, and I grabbed the camera and started taking photos of her, and she's just kind of expressing whatever feeling she's feeling in the sunlight, and I thought it was a really good moment.
Yeah, again, timeless. And part of it, I think, is the glasses that they'll have a very '60s vibe to them. But since it's shot on film, really stands out as if you told me this was shot in 1968, I'd be like, yeah, sure, of course. And Guru, how about you?
Just same thing, studying. I'm always studying. I'm always just like reading, watching, the valuable resources that we have of like studying everyone's work. I'm kind of trapped in LA right now. So I was out here working, and which means I don't have my huge library of photo books to sift through. So I've been doing mostly online and just really just not even just watching techniques and things like that, but really just studying people's photos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I have a question. Then one last question I'll ask you guys. That it's a curveball. I didn't tell you about this one ahead of time. What music is getting you through these times? Give me a song or an album that is keeping you going during quarantine. And
I gotta
maybe the
look
juices flowing for your photography.
What my playlist has been. Oh wow.
I mean, for me, it's been that J Electronica that just came out was fire.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man.
And also just going back to like I've been listening to a lot of like old school hip hops with my Tribe Called Quest, and going back and listening to things I guess never really listened to growing up. A lot of Afro beat, because that always keeps my joy up when I'm dancing around. Music is a very big part of my life, and I feel like I always have music playing in the background, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Guru?
I mean, I listen to everything. Obviously, I still work, so whatever sessions that I'm doing. But the last Brittany Howard album, I just can't get over it. So that's my like go-to every day. I turn that album on. It probably plays 2 or 3 times before I start switching back to everything else. So the Brittany Howard album is incredible.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it's anything that keeps the creativity flowing, keep you motivated. It's amazing what our photography can do for us and for others, and then of course music, all these different avenues of creativity and motivation. It's whatever helps, right? And if it can help at all. So I appreciate that. I know I didn't tell you I was going to ask you guys that at the end, but that's some great insight. Thank you guys so much for being here and for doing this. I know we went like way long, so appreciate all your time. I appreciate everyone's time here in attending this. Please check out more of Romeo's work on Instagram, and also of Guru's work on Instagram. Keep in touch. We're really excited to continue bringing you more programs like these as part of the Stay Home with Leica initiative with the Leica Academy. But again, everyone stay safe. Guru, Romeo, please let everyone know where to reach you or anything special, but any special message for everyone.
Just to stay safe. This is serious, so please, man, let's keep this up until we can go outside again. Social distancing is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stay home, stay safe.
Yeah, and hopefully everything takes turn for the better. And Romeo, we can see you playing again soon, and Guru, see you at different events again soon. So again, thank you everyone. We'll be in touch and look forward to seeing more of everyone via Stay Home with Leica. So stay safe, stay healthy, take care everyone. See you next time.